This is a residential street in southwest Atlanta. Not long ago, all the persons who lived here were white. But recently, a few Negro families moved in, and a scene too familiar in other areas of Atlanta was repeated. The white residents started moving out. For sale signs went up. The street became what is known as transitional, that stage when Negroes are moving in and white people are leaving. Soon this street may be resegregated, all Negro. The Atlanta Planning Department has warned that if this trend continues, it's just a matter of time until Atlanta will become an island of Negroes surrounded by a sea of white suburbanites. The Planning Department suggests as one solution an open housing law for the 5-county metropolitan area, or preferably for the entire state of Georgia. Open housing legislation would enable Negroes to buy houses in sections of Atlanta where they are turned away now simply because they are Negroes. But open housing legislation is not likely to be passed by conservative county governments, the General Assembly, or even Atlanta's Board of Aldermen. Another solution would be to change the attitude of persons in a transitional area like southwest Atlanta. Southwest Atlantans for Progress, known as SWAP, was organized for this purpose. At SWAP meetings, both races are able to discuss openly any suspicions or mistrust they have toward one another. Tom Oxnard, the editor of Southwest Atlanta's Weekly Star, is an active member of SWAP. He was asked if the overall problem could be boiled down to white residents not wanting to live next to Negroes.
Well, this is true, but then again, it's not true. There are a certain number of white residents who don't mind living next to a Negro. It's true that it may take 100 years for this problem to eventually iron itself out in the United States, but those of us who have been fighting in southwest Atlanta now for, well, I've been here 2 years, and there are many who've been here longer than me, feel that we've got to make the effort to try to learn to live with people who are different from ourselves. That if we don't, I mean, this is going against the whole grain of the American dream. Everybody deserves a decent house and a decent education, a decent income, and just because the Negroes are now coming up on the ladder, there's no reason why we should run every time one moves next door.
Are people staying?
That's a difficult question to answer also. In the area in southwest Atlanta, north of Sewell Road, there's been an almost complete flip-flop from white to Negro in the past year and a half. We have high hopes that the area between Sewell Road and Cascade Road, which has now got about 40% Negro population, will continue in somewhat that ratio of white to Negro. I think there are a large number of white people who would stay if conditions were such that they were made possible that they could stay. But there are so many pressures in a transition neighborhood, it's just hard to realize unless you live there. You not only get pressures from the real estate people, you get pressures from your contemporaries who live in other parts of town, who tend to say, well, there must be something wrong, why don't you leave the neighborhood? And you say, well, why should I leave the neighborhood? I like it here. So the tremendous pressures. There are pressures on the Negro families moving in. And it may be too early in the history of this country for there to be a good, workable interracial neighborhood, but as I say, those of us in SWAP are committed to try, and that's what we've done so far. We're still trying.
What has the city done?
The city has done virtually nothing. The city is sort of a, you don't know what to talk about when you talk about the city. Let's say that Mayor Ivan Allen has been sympathetic to the aims of SWAP, but he's not done anything specific to help us. I think he feels that, as many people do, that there's no hope in even trying to establish an interracial neighborhood. So why bother? But there's some things the city could have done, like banning for sale signs on residential property, which would have eased some of the psychological pressure that people in the neighborhoods feel, but the city backed off on this.
SWAP is now battling the proposed construction of public housing units on Sewell Road near the Perimeter Highway. Members told the Aldermanic Zoning Committee the housing would put a strain on public facilities like schools. And SWAP fears that public housing will bring a large number of Negroes into an area that's trying to achieve a racial balance. The zoning committee did vote to build the units in southwest Atlanta, but the proposal still must clear the full board of aldermen. Southwest Atlanta has become sort of a battleground where SWAP fights to prove that residents of a community can achieve a lasting racial balance in their own neighborhood. The odds are against them, but they're still fighting. This is Abe Gallman, WSB News.